Omega has brought back the first Omega in Space model, or FOIS as this is sometimes referred to as, and I think this is a big deal. This is an improvement over the prior FOIS that ran from 2012 to 2020. This has some very exciting things that Omega has implemented within the model, and I'll talk all about the good as well as the missed opportunities in this video. Thank you to Exquisite Timepieces for lending in this brand new release for a review. Exquisite is a family-owned authorized dealer for Omega in Florida. They actually have a huge selection of Omega in addition to 60 other brands. If you're shopping Omega, I recommend Exquisite. A link is below. Now, what does this watch do well in? I think several things. One is the dark slate blue sunray dial. This pays homage to a few different references from decades past that had this color dial in. They were actually prototype dials that ended up getting cased, and they're pretty obscure. So I like the fact that that Omega is celebrating some of these more obscure releases, and in most lights the dial looks black, but then you angle it just right and you see that slate blue come to play. I think it looks really good, and this is continuing a trend with Omega of kind of toning down some of their releases, but still keeping them very visually interesting. So I really like this dial. I like the fact that it's a proper step dial in terms of the form. I like the sunken sub-registers that have faint concentric circle texturing. And I like the fact that this watch is sized at 39.7 millimeters in case diameter. It has a lug tip to lug tip dimension of 48 millimeters. And the total height to the top of this bubble-shaped sapphire crystal is 13.4 millimeters. Now, the lugs are 19 millimeters wide, and I think this looks excellent on my wrist. And this really surprised me because I have larger wrists and I generally prefer large sport watches, but I actually love the way this looks on my 7.25-inch wrist. I think this is just perfectly proportioned. It's comfortable. It's striking when it comes to that color play of the dial, and it has all of those retro elements that should be at play on a CK2998 reference. So again, this is kind of surprising to me. I don't generally like sub 40 millimeter sport watches, but for whatever reason, this one just looks great. Now here it is next to the 40 millimeter Rolex Daytona. The Daytona is pretty widely regarded as a perfectly proportioned chronograph, and this first Omega in space, it almost looks identical in terms of dimensions and then just overall proportions. So I wanted to make that visual comparison. Going in on the dial on a macro level, I enjoy the alpha style hands. The hours, minutes, and seconds are all alpha styled. They're all polished. And then all of the chronograph related hands, the hours, minutes, and seconds, those are all painted white and they're needle style. So it's fun to see the two different designs on one watch. I also think that Omega did a great job in recreating the retro applied logo and the old Omega and Speedmaster fonts. That's probably my favorite detail of the dial, though I also really enjoy that narrow strip of lume that's found in the alpha minute hand. Now, the crystal is sapphire, but it looks like hesselite, like the original reference would have had. And this even has the distinctive Omega hallmark or logo in the center of the crystal above the hand stack. And then this crystal has a layer of ARC on the underside, but in my opinion, it really doesn't do anything in terms of minimizing reflections. And this is the single biggest missed opportunity on the part of Omega, by not placing great ARC on this sapphire crystal. I understand they wanted to recreate the look of hesselite, which generally has quite a bit of reflections, but I don't know why not just place hesselite on this watch. Or if you're going to go to the trouble of sapphire, put on that awesome ARC that we know Omega can do. But that's personal opinion there. Now, the watch has a Meta-certified 3861 hand wind movement within. It has a coaxial escapement. And I think the architecture of the caliber is beautiful from a design aspect. It's also finished well, so it is kind of a shame that it's hidden behind a pretty boring stainless steel case back. Let me know if you would rather see the movement behind in an open case back, or if you like the sterile stainless steel case back. The movement has 50 hours of power reserve. It beats at 3 hertz. It's magnetic resistant up to 15,000 Gauss, which really is a high threshold. And it is manual winding. And honestly, I love manually winding a caliber every couple days. Most of my watches are automatics, but I find it great to have a manual wind in the collection. And so I definitely like that here on this FOIS. Lastly, this watch is offered on a flat link styled bracelet with a milled clasp that has a quick comfort setting, which I think is a good thing. But the important point about the bracelet is the dominant finish, which is brushing, brushed center links, a brushed clasp, an old school logo. I'm a big fan of all of that. And I think the bracelet takes this watch to the next level. And that's how I would recommend buying the first Omega in space. Buy it on the bracelet and then pick up the leather or other straps at a later date, because the watch certainly is versatile. Now, what does this watch not do so well in? Well, I think some will hate the orange-colored old radium style lume, and normally I'm with you, but for some weird reason, I don't hate this. When mixed with the Sunray slate blue dial, there's something complimentary about that pairing. I definitely think I would hate the old lume if it was just on a black dial, but with the blue, I don't think it looks so bad. But let me know what you think about that in the comments section. I do think the biggest missed opportunity, like I mentioned earlier, is not doing proper ARC. That's something that means a lot to me personally. But one that I could go either way on is the closed case back. I could personally sacrifice a small amount of total height for a sapphire display case back, because I like looking at the Lemania-based movement, but I definitely don't mind the slightly thinner stainless steel case back. Let me know where you stand. I think all of the potential negative aspects are fairly nitpicky. I don't see any as being egregious or glaring, although this specific example, it does have some dust in the dial, which is a little bit surprising. It is an example of poor QC, and I definitely do not expect all of the first Omega in space models to have this type of dial. But given how many watches Omega makes, occasionally it's reasonable to expect issues like this to pop up from time to time. And that's one of the reasons why I do enjoy buying from an authorized dealer and having things like this corrected under warranty immediately. Now, on the whole, I really like this watch, and it surprised me. I thought my favorite Speedmaster in the current catalog was the white dial, but I think this one has surpassed it with that subtle slate blue sunray, with the old school logo, with the proportions, with that great flat link bracelet. I really like what Omega has done with this. And yes, I would absolutely love to buy one at a future date and proudly wear it in my own watch rotation. Again, surprising to me because I don't often buy sub 40 millimeter sport watches. Yes, this is a proper homage to the original CK2998. Some criticize the Speedmaster for being a little boring or a little basic, a little conservative. But to you, I would remind you that these watches, they were chosen to be tools on astronauts' wrists, to be used in missions in low Earth orbit and microgravity, and they're not meant to win fashion awards. So even though this watch does have a somewhat muted conservative appearance, I still think it's exciting with that slate blue sunray dial, with the straight lines of the case and the bracelets. Yes, this is on my wish list now. And I do think it's another example of Omega continuing to release great watches and make market gains. Let me know if you have any questions. Check out Exquisite Timepieces if you're shopping this watch or any other Omega. You're welcome to use my own sales associate. I've linked his contact information below. And feel free to name drop me. Like this video if you appreciated it or got something from it. And if you'd like to see more content like this, please subscribe. I'd really appreciate that. Thanks.